So you got plans for the holidays? Are you?
No. Well,
Oh, okay.
I mean, I
Our
think,
meeting is,
oh, has it started?
I believe so.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association. And today we have a real treat for you as a part of our ongoing partnership with the American Cinema Editors. We have a special spotlight on Fabienne Rawley, who is one of the very few editors, animation editors in Hollywood. So welcome, Fabienne.
Fabienne, yeah, hi. Thank you, Gil.
So, I mean, I'm looking at your filmography, and I mean, it's incredible. I mean, there must be a dozen or plus films on here, going back to, things like Cool Running, um, Driven, on to, more recent projects like Zootopia and Ralph Breaks the Internet. So, I mean, how did this all happen for you? How did you become interested in editing?
Well, I didn't go to film school. I started becoming interested in editing, actually. I was a literature and sculpture major at university. And I started, so with literature, of course, you're doing a lot of reading, and it's all about story and how to tell stories and stuff like that. And I was also watching a lot of movies, and I became very interested in how movies were made, the structure of how movies were made, how they told the story, sort of from the technical side of it, actually. So, how did they figure out how to build the story visually with characters and things like that. And at the time, I was a student. I was doing a year abroad in Paris, and I was working in a small PR firm. And a woman there suggested that I look into editing, because editing was a field that she felt was more open to women than other fields in the film industry. So I got a bunch of books on the subject, and I started reading about it. And I thought that it would be a really good thing for me to look into. So that's what I did. And I had a friend who was working at Canon Films here in Los Angeles. This is a very long time ago. And she said, why don't you come over and just hang out? So I went and hung out with her and basically worked at Canon Films for about 2 or 3 months for free and learning sort of the basic assistant stuff, and went on from there.
Wow, and so what precipitated the move into animation?
So I'd been working in live action probably for about 15 years or so, and or more. And I had a friend who was working on an animatic for a film called Monster House, and he was by himself, and he really needed help. So he called me, and I went over and helped him. And this was the first time that I had anything that I'd experienced storyboards. I'd never worked with storyboards before. I had assumed that animation films were basically, I didn't think there was any editing involved in animation. I just thought you got the animated shot and you got the other animated shot and you stuck them together. I didn't know anything about it. Well, I learned very quickly how it was done. So we worked on an animatic for about 6 months with storyboards, recording dialogue, adding sound effects, music and everything, creating a whole sort of 90-minute animatic of Monster House. Monster House was done with using motion capture technology. So, which meant that we did have an actual shoot. We shot for 10 weeks. We motion captured the whole movie in 10 weeks, based on the animatic. It was all based on the animatic. And then we put it together, and then it was animated afterwards. So that was my introduction to the whole process. Yeah.
So now, how is it different? It sounds so very complicated. And I know editing is complicated as enough, but animation editing sounds even more so.
It is. It's much more involved. So in live action editing, you get, they shoot the movie with actors who are speaking the dialogue. So you have, when you get the shot, the actor is actually saying the dialogue, and there's usually they record sounds. So you have atmospheres, you can hear their footsteps, you hear everything that they're doing, and you have a performance and you have a vocal performance, and you have the performance on the face and everything. You have an actual shot. So in animation, that happens at the end. So you start off with a script, and the script is given to a bunch of storyboard artists. So we have the core creative team is a director, writer, head of story, producer, and editor. And so we start from the beginning of the movie and we go all the way through to the end, pretty much. So there'll be a script, and various sequences will be given out to a team of story artists. And the story artists are the very first people to kind of start imagining what it's going to look like, what a character is facial expressions are going to be like, everything, all of that stuff. So they really start with like a blank page, and they start staging and giving you shots in storyboards. But it's not like, it's different than boarding for a live action movie where you will have one board to indicate a camera angle. So a storyboard artist will sort of pose it out for you. So if a character is walking from one place to another or going somewhere, you get various poses. And those poses, so you get a sequence, and you might have anywhere from 50 to 100 to 150 boards per sequence, and you have to time those out with dialogue, with sound effects, with music, and all that kind of thing. And that is sort of the most laborious part of it, but it's also really fun because all the elements are separate, and you can decide. For example, we record scratch dialogue, so and you can decide which piece of dialogue you want to use. You can take out lines, you can compress the vocal performance. You can decide where the line is going to fall in a particular shot. So it gives you a lot of creative freedom to create the pacing and the rhythm of a scene, and the interactions between the characters, because very often we record all the actors separately. Sometimes, if we're lucky, we can record them together. So then we have a sort of interaction between the two characters, but very often we don't. So it's up to the editor to create the tension in the scene, the emotion in the scene, everything with the vocal performances that we match with the storyboards.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. How do you maintain or create a rhythm and maintain, the feeling, the emotion in the scene? But that seems like it would take a great deal of effort.
Well, you talk to the writers. So when a story artist has finished boarding a scene, they pitch it, and they do several iterations. So, for example, their first pass, they'll pitch to the directors, and the director will give notes with the writer, and they'll make adjustments. And it's very possible even the story artist might suggest, why don't we try this? Or I'd like to add a line here, or maybe we don't need this bit here, or I've compressed this. So it's a very collaborative relationship between the story team and the writer and the director. And then when the director feels it's pretty close, then they bring the editorial team up. We're a whole team. I mean, I'm a lead editor, but I have a whole team of people. And also I very often work with the second editor. So we are very often two leads. And we get the sequence pitched to us. We ask questions of the director, and then we bring it down to editorial, and we attack it, with sound effects and dialogue and everything, and try and recapture what was pitched to us. So our first sort of feeling of the scene is what is pitched from the story artist. And then it just kind of evolves from there. Yeah.
And I know it can also take a long time to, I'm often surprised at the length of time it takes to finish one animated movie. I've heard, over a period of years just to finish, especially obviously some of the bigger ones.
Yes, and the reason for that is not that, well, animation takes a long time. To animate a shot takes a long time, but the most of the time is used up in figuring out the story. So you spend, let's say, the films that I've worked on at Disney have taken approximately 3 years each, approximately. And basically the first 2 years, your first 18 months, you're figuring out the story. And as you're figuring out the story with the story artists and the directors and writers, there's a whole other section, the visual development people, people who are the modelers, the character designers, the costume people, all that is being created in the background, sort of waiting to see where a scene is going to land and how the film is going to gel. But usually when you start, you kind of know, okay, we're going to have however many set pieces, however many characters. That's sort of, you start with that at least. And so then that gets built. And while that's being built, which takes a long time, we are figuring out the story. So we make the film several times. We build it the first time, the whole thing. So we'll have several screenings, about three or 4 months apart. And every time we screen it, we might keep maybe 1 or 2 scenes, hopefully more than that, but sometimes we throw the whole thing out. We keep the characters and the locations, but then we'll go, well, we need to shift this character this way, or this isn't working, we need something else there. So then we go back to the drawing board, and then it goes back to the story artist, and it comes back to editorial. So this sort of routine goes on for a while until everything starts to gel, until the movie starts to tell us how it wants to be told, and then we kind of start turning things over into layout, which is sort of previs.
But I mean, as film professions go, it sounds like being an editor, particularly an editor in animation, offers a great deal of stability, because if you're working on a project for.
Yes. That is actually, the really great part about it. And that was, for me anyway, when I was working on Monster House. Before I worked on Monster House, all my jobs were sort of 6 months, 9 months, and then you're back, looking for work again. So that can be, when you have a family and everything else, it can be very stressful. I was very lucky to get this job at Disney, and I'm very grateful for the sort of consistent employment, and also that everyone at Disney is incredibly talented, and it's an amazing sort of creative place. So it's great.
So what's the environment like in terms of diversity and inclusion? I know that a lot of inroads are being made. A lot of studios have really upped their commitment towards being more inclusive. But what is it like in editing in general, and Disney specifically?
Well, the whole studio, as you know from Bob Chapek, he has instituted these sort of 6 pillars to focus on the work of bringing more diverse people into the company. And Jennifer Lee, who is the Chief Creative Officer over at Walt Disney Animation, has done an enormous amount of work to bring creative teams, sort of writers, directors of diverse backgrounds and people of color into the studio to bring projects that are more applicable. And in editorial, the thing about editorial, certainly with animation, is so the jobs are really long, which is great, but that means the turnover is very slow. right? And so we have a certain number of teams that are currently working in Disney animation. And we're hoping that now that Disney Plus is requiring more content, we'll be able to expand our teams and bring a more diverse crews in. So.
And so in terms of women and other minorities, how would you say, what is the field like?
The field, animation?
And specifically in animation editing. I mean, I know you're one of the very few, which,
yes,
you know, and
there's
so
not,
I'm just,
I'm one of the few. So we have actually 4 women in editorial at Disney. We have a music editor, Kendall Demarest. We have Caroline, who is an assistant editor, and we have Sarah Rungs, who's the other lead, female lead. And I think at Pixar there are more women. I don't know about other companies. I mean, I've only worked at Disney Animation. I haven't worked anywhere else, so I don't know. I mean, in animation, so I don't know what the other companies are doing.
well, that's the very best. So certainly has the reputation of being among the best.
Mm.
Is it a competitive field? Or is it once you get in, you're with the team, people know your work, they know your history, they know your ethic, and you just go on from there, from project to project? Or do you have to actually compete, audition, if you will, for every outing?
Well, you know, I mean, I think this goes for any editing job or any job in the business. You know, you always have to be at the top of your game. You've always got to know. You've always got to. You can't relax and sort of be lazy or not do your best. You've always got to do your best. So I think that I don't know about competitive, but I would say that
as compared to some of the other professions in the industry, acting for one, but even directing, and you know, that can be sort of competitive with people jockeying for a particular assignment. I'm just wondering if it really exists in your field, since it seems a lot more tight-knit.
Yes, it is, because once you get a job, it's for a long time, and then you build relationships and things like that. But yeah, I think it is competitive, definitely. Like, for example, I mean, I started out in live action, but I think if I were to go back into that, it would be very competitive. I don't know if I would find work in live action. But yeah, I mean, I think it is competitive. And the way to deal with it is just to do the best you can at all times.
I'll ask you one of the questions we've gotten in. How many times do you have to cut the movie all the way through to the finished film?
There isn't a set amount of times, but you cut it a lot. So that process I was telling you about, where for the first 18 months to 2 years, you're sort of building the story. You cut different versions of the movie. There can be 6 to 8 different versions of the movie, and some of them can be completely different. I mean, completely different. Different characters. You can throw out characters, add characters, so that process, I'd say in the storyboard process, you do about 6 to 8 versions of the movie. And then when you get into layout and previs, so there's a period of time where the movie you have all 3 things going. You'll have storyboard sections, parts that have been approved to go into layout, which is sort of the previs, where you pre-visualize the camera, which is slightly more locked, right? But even though you don't have open mouth, the characters aren't speaking like that, so you can still fiddle with the dialogue and put anything in their mouths, kind of thing. And then towards the end, when you lock down on what the characters are really going to be saying and what the scene is, then it goes to animation.
So what is the thing you like most about your job?
What I like most about my job is the collaborations. So the really, and it's also what's so incredibly different about animation and live action. So in live action, you just, you're just basically, you come at the end after everything's been shot, you're sitting in the room with the director, it's just the two of you, and you're sort of, putting it all together. With animation, you're there at the very beginning. I mean, there is nothing, and you work, and you get to see what these incredible story artists present. You get to work with the directors and the writers. You can suggest things. You're part of the whole writing and building of the story. So you're much more sort of invested. You can change anything at any time, and make suggestions.
It's a different level of ownership in the project.
Yes, you feel really connected. You feel really connected to the characters, to every tiny little aspect of everything that's in the frame, because you've seen it from nothing. And so, you really care about it, and you care about all the people who've put all their effort into it. I mean, I have to say, for animation, there's something that Jen Lee says, that we're all part of the movie, and we really are.
Okay. Another question from our audience. And I know you've addressed this, but maybe you can give us a little more. If you've cut live action, what is the main difference? And what, if any, skill transfer from live action to animation?
Well, I kind of already said that. So the main,
right.
The main difference is, well, with live action, you're stuck with the performance that was shot. And the great thing about animation, it's completely flexible all the way to the very end, which is great, and also crazy making at the same time. And what was the other part of the question? I can't.
Skill transfers. So the application of, skills in one area versus the other. Do they transfer?
It's basically the same skills. I mean, you need to know how to use the Avid. The big difference, or the challenge that I had, and probably still have actually, is timing scenes. So, I mean, timing the storyboards. That's the trickiest part, because you can really change a whole feeling of an interaction between characters or a scene, depending on how fast you pace the boards. So that's something you can learn, but that's the most challenging part of it. But it's the same skills.
I know you just mentioned Avid. What type of influence is technology having on how you edit, or the way in which the job is done? Because it seems like we're being, just a constant infusion of, new technologies that I guess are meant to improve how we normally do things. So is that taking place in animation editing?
Yes. For example, it's a plus if in addition to Avid, Photoshop and After Effects, but but those are just sort of like icing on the cake. The bottom line is being able to tell stories, and that's the main thing. So you do that in the live action or in animation. I mean, I started out before there was any Avids, right? So it was just film. So you could only have the picture track, and maybe 2 audio tracks. So you'd have maybe music, or you'd split your dialogue up maybe, but you wouldn't be adding sound effects and music and stuff like that. Nowadays, because of the Avid, in editorial, we do everything. We do the visual, we can do basic visual effects. We do sound mixing. We do all the sound work, temporary. We have temp sound with the animatics. We put temporary music in. And if you want to do special moves or sort of help the directors visualize a particular transition or something, then we will sometimes use After Effects to help us tell those stories. So we need to know a lot of stuff.
I mean, it's commonly said that, both the writer and the editor perform 2 of the most critical roles in motion pictures. How do you manage that stress? Because of course, if you don't get it right, then it's like having a dentist in your mouth and you want everything to go perfectly. So how do you make sure, maybe not exactly, but how do you manage that pressure to always hit the high note?
I go swimming. I go swimming. I swim like 4 times a week for about an hour.
Okay.
So that's how I do it. But, you just, the other good thing about animation is that, and also Disney, is all ideas are welcome, whether they end up being accepted or used or anything like that. They just always want everyone to contribute and to offer an idea, because we all participate in the creation of the movie. So I sometimes feel a certain amount of pressure to come up with solutions and fixes, and sometimes you don't have that right on the spot. You might be in the room with the directors and the writers and producer and head of story and everything, and there's a problem trying to figure out how to solve a particular thing. And these guys, they're so incredibly smart. They go, would you do this or change this board or do that or whatever, or I'll draw this, or let's just re-record that line and we can just stick it in. And they're really fast with that. And so it takes me a little bit more time to come up with solutions, or,
I mean, it sounds cool, because when you think of editing, you think of such a solitary job assignment, but it sounds like in animation, you really do work, you're really a part of a team.
Absolutely. I mean, initially when you're doing the heavy lifting and the building of the thing, getting all the bits together, you are by yourself, with your editorial team, of course, because you're nothing without your team, let me tell you. So, but then you work with this team of writers and sometimes multiple directors, and and you're all together solving the problems and trying to make it better. Yeah.
What kind of impact has COVID? What has it been like navigating through that, or has it had an impact on?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we all used to be in one building. The entire Disney animation was in one building, and now we're not. Now we're all in our houses. We have, I have to say, an incredible technological team at Disney who has been able to make it so that we can all work from home, all connect to each other through Zoom. We have a special software so we can actually connect our Avid to the internet or whatever, so that the directors, so we can present our cuts from the Avid. So that's an amazing thing. That took a few weeks to figure out, but so it's basically like having the editing room in your house, except all the people in the edit session are in little boxes on your laptop. But yeah.
Do you anticipate anything changing after COVID? I know there's a lot of talk about how, because people have been working out of their homes and it's sort of become convenient, they've become used to it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see things maybe changing post-COVID? Or will you return to your office full time?
Well, yes, I think all that is still way up in the air. But obviously, I think that they're going to make it so people aren't working so closely together. I mean, I work in a room by myself anyway, but when we have edit sessions with 5 or 6 people, maybe we'll have to do that differently. Maybe they might put a cap on how many people can be in a room. I'm not quite sure. I think everyone's just still trying to figure it out. But I mean, I certainly COVID will have a huge impact on how everyone works. That's for sure. Yeah.
Now, if a person's interested in animation editing, what would you suggest they do?
Well, the first thing I think is to learn an editing software. So the best one, the one that we use, is Avid. There are others out there, but that's the one we use. And I think just editing anything. So there are schools, like there's CalArts and other schools that teach animation. There are students who have student films that need editing. So the thing is, I mean, you have to be willing to do stuff for free sometimes just to get the experience, to see what does it feel like to cut storyboards? What does she mean by pacing or timing out boards? I don't know what that means. Well, you can go and ask a student if you can cut a scene for them or something. In fact, a few months ago, I mean, before COVID, and I guess it was last year or something, I happened to be at Cal Arts to see an art show of a son of a friend of mine. And I saw all these little post-it notes, need editor for this, need composer for this, need, you know, so there's always, all students need their films cut. So that's a good experience.
And then I'm sure Disney Animation probably offers internships and initiatives. And I believe that the American Cinema Editors also have programs for Nextgen talent.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. All that I think that information is probably available on various websites and things like that. Yeah.
So, I mean, this sounds like it's such a full life and job. I mean, have you, what do you think you would be doing if you weren't doing this though?
Oh. If I wasn't editing animation, or if I wasn't editing at all?
Editing at all.
If I wasn't editing at all, I'd probably be making sculptures.
Because I know you've had such a wonderful life living in London and France and now California. So I was just wondering if you weren't doing it, maybe you would be sculpting on the south of France.
Well, I don't know about the south of France, but I'd be, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, sculpting and painting and writing, reading, just those kinds of things probably, and waiting for my son to have a child so that I can be a grandparent.
Miss Rawley, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate the insight that you brought to giving us a better understanding of your profession.
Oh, well, good. Well, I hope it was helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Would you like to share any social handles that people can follow to just stay in touch with you?
Oh.
Or not, or LinkedIn, or
LinkedIn. That's a good way to be. Yeah. LinkedIn's good. That's about it. I don't really do the Facebook thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is terrific. Again, my name is Gil Robertson. On behalf of the African American Film Critics Association and the American Cinema Editors, we'd like to thank you for joining us today. And we hope that you will join us for our next collaboration. We'll be doing Macy Hoy in December. Everyone have a great day. And you can follow us on social media at AAFCA on Instagram and also at the AAFCA on Twitter. You can also please send this episode with Ms. Rawley to your friends and anyone interested in having a better understanding of editing. All they have to do is go to the AAFCA channel on YouTube.